El Camino, it's a follow-up to the Breaking Bad finale, written and directed by Vince Gilligan. The story follows Jesse as he tries to get away from the cops and face down an old enemy once again. Jesse, this is largely going to be Jesse's story. The film does a great job of tying up any loose ends that Breaking Bad may have left. The film, it also shows how far we've come in the series. We get flashbacks here and there showing character interactions and how certain things came to be in the series. And I think Vince Gilligan is really good at taking these small details and expanding on them and eventually paying them off with great satisfaction. I watched El Camino for the first time when it first came out, and I remember thinking that wasn't as good as I wanted it to be because when I first saw it, I wanted I wanted more from it. I wanted to see um, more characters, but like I said earlier, this is largely Jesse's story. So I sat on it for a few months. I watched the whole thing again, and last night I watched it again, and I enjoyed it a lot more this last time. This epilogue is very focused, which at first I didn't appreciate, but now I very much like. I would have liked to see other characters and where they are at this point in the series, but I understand why Vince Gilligan he didn't include other characters. I mean, if you really think about it, Jesse's story was the only one that we didn't get 100% closure on. Now, without spoiling anything in the film, it's since it's Jesse's story, it's his story of redemption after all the shit that he's been through with Walter White and the white supremacists. Jesse's goal throughout this whole movie is to get to Alaska and, find his redemption. And in his journey to Alaska, there's still some things he needs to take care of before he can get there. Because when we leave him off in Breaking Bad, I mean, he's just driving away from the compound in that El Camino. So he's got to get that El Camino. He's got to get that money and he's got to disappear. And I think Vince Gilligan, he had a really great way of implementing these tasks into the narrative that is Breaking Bad, because in his pursuits, he he runs into certain people, and I don't want to say who just yet, but he runs into people he might not want to run into. Now, I think one of the most important aspects of Breaking Bad and what of El Camino really is the flashbacks. We get a lot of flashbacks in this film, and we get flashbacks of when he was captured by the white supremacist and the time that he spent with Todd. And while the flashbacks they aren't pivotal to the Breaking Bad series as a whole, I felt that they were pivotal to the movie. For example, I'll just go ahead and say we find out where Jesse gets the idea of going to Alaska. Pivotal to it's not pivotal to Breaking Bad, but it's pivotal to the movie's plot. And I'll talk about that scene here in a moment. So now I'm going to move into spoiler territory. If you've not seen El Camino, Breaking Bad, I would recommend leaving right now and then, coming back later. Yeah, El Camino, it opens to a flashback between Mike and Jesse, and we learn where Jesse got his idea to go to Alaska. I felt that this scene gave more insight into Jesse and Mike's relationship, and it shows that while Jesse spent a lot of time with Walter White and started to see Walter as a sort of father figure, Mike is truly the father that Jesse never had. You can tell in their interactions that Mike, he really cared for Jesse and was concerned uh, with Jesse's well-being. I mean, he tells Jesse various times throughout the Breaking Bad show, you need to get out of this, you need to go away, you need to go off somewhere else because Walter is a ticking time bomb and I don't want you to be around for the boom. And then we move on to Badger and Skinny Pete. And Badger and Skinny Pete are they're really charming characters, and like Jesse, I believe that they are really good people who again they really care for Jesse, and we meet them, and they're just chilling in their in their basement. They're just chilling in I guess it's Skinny Pete's house, playing some Grand Theft Auto, and as always, it's a pleasure to see these two on screen. I've always loved their banter between them, and they play kind of a short role in the film, but they help Jesse get rid of the car, and it's a great way to wrap up their relations their relationship. Skinny and Jesse, they have that heartfelt moment of Skinny telling Jesse that he's his hero, and you can tell it means a lot to Jesse hearing that coming from Skinny, because from what I got from their relationship, they were never really, touchy feely kind of friends, but you could tell they cared about each other. But Skinny gives him a good pat on the back and gives him his famous hat, and it was just a really great character moment between the two of those. But what I should also mention is that this story is a lot about Todd and Jesse, and we all know Todd. I've always found Todd to be an extremely interesting character, but also a very fucked up character, if you will. Todd, he's very ruthless, and I mean, after all, he killed a kid just for seeing their train heist, but he also, and I'll probably get flack for saying this, he comes off as kind of a nice guy, sort of, which makes him so compelling as a character. I mean, he's almost charming, and Jesse Plemons does a great job in this film portraying the character in such a cool yet dark manner. So in the film, Todd asks Jesse to help him with a little project, and at first I remember seeing this film thinking, oh God, what could it be? And as we come to find out, it's moving a body of someone that Todd had killed. In this case, it was Todd's housekeeper, and all because Todd's housekeeper discovered his hidden stash of drug money. And the eerie thing about this killing was Todd, he was just so unaffected by it. I mean, he just walks in, says he feels bad about it. He notices that the belt that he killed the lady with is still around her neck. He just takes off the belt and puts it back on, and as if he's nothing. And he asks Jesse to roll up the body in a carpet and just starts making soup. I mean, yeah, it's pretty cold blooded if you ask me. And Todd, he doesn't act like he cares at all. I mean, he says he does, but he really doesn't. And then after they finally bury the woman in the middle of the desert, oh, but what I should mention is on the way there, he's just like singing in his car, and it's almost difficult to watch after after Jesse buries the woman. Todd kind of just says to Jesse, "Do you want to say a few words?" And Jesse's like, "Really?" I'm like, "No, there's nothing I really want to say." So, like I said earlier, the reason that Todd killed his housekeeper in the first place was because she found that hidden stash of money. So Jesse, he goes back to the apartment where Todd lived, and he searches for the money, and it's not in the same place anymore because Todd tells Jesse at one point, like, "Yeah, I'm gonna hide the money again in my apartment somewhere." So, Todd, he goes to hide the money. Jesse eventually does find the money, and he runs into some old friends who are looking for that money as well. Now, when they first show up, they're dressed in those cop uniforms, and you're thinking, oh my God, like it's a couple of cops searching a place. But what we find out later is that they are impersonating police officers, and they're actually the welders that created that cage for Jesse for the white supremacists. And Jesse cuts a deal with them to take some of the money, and he goes to the the disappearer, good old Ed Galbraith or whatever his name was. And when he gets there, the disappearer basically tells him, like, "Yo, you're $1,800 short because I'm gonna charge you for two pickups." And Jesse, yeah, since he's short on money, he has to get that $1,800, otherwise he'll be dead. So Jesse, being the smart guy that he is, he has to trick his parents to get a gun because the welders took his gun when they caught him in Todd's apartment. So he so Jesse, when he's searching Todd's house for that money, he notices his parents on the TV screen and he sees them talking to the news. So he thinks, well, I know my parents have a gun, and I don't think these welders are going to give me the money willingly. So he goes to his parents' house. He calls them before he gets there, and he kind of says goodbye to them. He tricks them into leaving so that he can go into the house and get a gun. And this was also a really great scene because you see him pick up two guns. One's kind of a little 22, and one's like, I don't know what it was, but it was a bigger bullet gun. And Jesse, being the nice guy that he is, he tries at first going to the welders and, asking nicely for the money, saying, like, "Yo, I just need $1,800 and then I'll be out of your hair." And again, this is a character moment for Jesse because it shows that he doesn't want violence, but he's willing to do it if it's necessary. So the welders are like, "No, we're not going to give you any money." So they cut a deal, and the welder, thinking Jesse only has a 22 on him, says, "You know what? We'll have a little, wild, wild west duel right here." So Jesse, he outsmarts the welders by using a gun that he has concealed, and he kills the welders, takes the money, goes to the disappearer, and boom, Jesse has disappeared. He gets to go to Alaska and live happily ever after. But that's not the end. We still get those flashbacks, which I think are really important. So we get a flashback of the famous Walter White. I was wondering if he was going to be in this movie, and he was. And I believe this flashback was from the second season when they got stranded, right after they got stranded in the desert. And once again, I'll say that this flashback shows how far we've come in this series. Walter is back to his good old season 2 self, and by that I mean in earlier seasons, Walter still hadn't fully become Heisenberg, and we see them, they're sitting down in a diner and they're talking over a meal, and Walter White, you could tell at this point he still cared for Jesse because he saw an ending to their partnership at this point in the series. He's asking Jesse, well, what are you going to do after our partnership's over? Like, do you want to go to college? Do you want to, whatever. He's asking him all these questions because he sees an end to their relationship. He doesn't want to build an empire, so to speak. And I think the purpose of the scene was to show how much the character's grown. Jesse, at this point, was still a loudmouth young boy. He's kind of flaunting his money. And Walter was still a teacher and a father concerned for Jesse's well being. And it was really good to see both of them together again and show just how far they've come. But then this was probably my favorite flashback. It was the final scene in the movie when Jesse was driving off in Alaska. Jesse, he makes it to Alaska, and just before the movie closes, we see that final flashback between Jane and Jesse. And in this scene, Jane and Jesse are talking about the universe. She talks about how she always let Jane is talking about how she lets the universe make decisions for her, where she always took where the wind took her. And she actually admits like this is a terrible philosophy and that we shouldn't let the universe make decisions for us. We should make those decisions for ourselves. And that's a really, really great way, I feel, to wrap up Breaking Bad as well as El Camino. The reason I say that is because when Jesse started making decisions for himself, I feel like that's kind of when things got better for him. All his life, he had sort of just kind of gone with the flow of things and let the universe push him around. I mean, he's a smart kid, and I feel like he just kind of fell into the meth business because it was a convenient way of making money. I mean, if you think back to earlier seasons, Walter asked him at one point, Jesse, why do you do this? And he's like, money mainly. It wasn't really anything he was passionate about. It was just it was a means to an end for him. And when Jesse starts finally taking control of things at first they go to complete shit, but then eventually it all works out for him. Things they get better for him. He Walter finally dies, and Jesse he finds his closure in Alaska, and again it was a really great way to wrap up Breaking Bad and wrap up the story that is El Camino. So if you guys enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a comment down below. Shoot me a like if you want to, and I'll try and post here another video review here, well, rather an audio review. I did do a video review of this movie, but I was just having trouble converting the files, so I kind of apologize about that. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe down below. I'll try and post another video here pretty soon. And yeah, thank you for listening.